The 28th day of the Trump Republican shutdown opens with Democrats gathered inside the U.S. Capitol, determined to draw attention to what they describe as a growing crisis for ordinary Americans. At the center of their concern is not only a government that remains shuttered, but a deeper human cost, families struggling to afford health care, and millions at risk of losing access to food assistance programs. Democratic leaders begin by reiterating their willingness to negotiate. They say they will meet anytime, any place here at the Capitol or back at the White House in order to reopen the government and enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people. But their tone hardens quickly as they accuse the Trump administration of manufacturing a crisis. They argue that Republicans, by refusing to extend Affordable Care Act tax credits, have triggered a surge in healthcare costs for working-class Americans, farmers, city workers, and families across rural and urban communities. In this standoff, they say, the poorest are bearing the weight. Premiums, co-pays, and deductibles, one leader explains, are increasing by thousands of dollars per year for tens of millions of people. Beyond healthcare, Democrats accuse the administration of threatening to weaponize hunger against the American people. They point to the administration's hold on nutritional assistance funds, support that feeds children, seniors, and veterans across the country. The figure they cite is staggering: an $186 billion cut to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the largest in U.S. history. One speaker describes it bluntly: Republicans, she says, have ripped food from the mouths of children, seniors, veterans, women, and families in order to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, takes the podium next. Her tone is fiery and resolute. What President Trump is doing on the hunger issue and on the nutrition issue is immoral, she declares. DeLauro insists the administration is ignoring clear legal obligations. Congress, she says, has already allocated contingency funds over $5 billion to ensure that SNAP benefits continue even during a shutdown. That money, she reminds the audience, is not optional spending. It is required by law. DeLauro accuses the administration of violating the 1974 Empowerment Control Act by blocking the release of these funds. She points out that as recently as October, the White House drew hundreds of millions from the very same contingency fund to pay benefits in Puerto Rico and other states. There's nothing stopping the Trump administration, she argues, from making sure that every single one of the 42 million Americans, 16 million children, 8 million seniors, 4 million people with disabilities, 1.2 million veterans receive nutrition assistance in November. Her frustration grows as she outlines what she calls misplaced priorities. When Trump wanted to bail out an ally in Argentina, she notes, they found $40 billion. When he wanted to build a new ballroom to host his billionaire donors, they found another $350 million. When officials wanted luxury private jets for the Homeland Security Secretary, $172 million was made available. But now, she says sharply, when it comes to making sure hungry families can put food on the table, suddenly they can't find the money. The Congresswoman's message is moral as much as political. She asks whether anyone truly believes there is a shortage of food in the United States. We have an abundance, she says, and the president is required by law to use the money that Congress appropriated. If he does not, it is because he chooses not to. The press conference turns into a broader appeal. This is not a game, DeLauro continues. It's people's lives. We are the wealthiest nation in the world. Not an adult, not a child, not a senior, not a veteran should go hungry in the United States. She calls on the administration to reopen the government, address the healthcare crisis, and stop using hunger as a political weapon. Congresswoman Angie Craig from Minnesota echoes that message with raw emotion. She accuses the administration of taking food away from 42 million Americans and using hunger as a bargaining chip in a government shutdown. Her criticism targets not just policy, but attitude. The president can't even be bothered to be in the country, she says, while Americans line up at food shelves across our nation. Craig underscores that the administration already has the funds and legal authority to extend SNAP benefits. If the president wanted to help feed hungry Americans, he would, she says. He does whatever he wants to, whether it's legal or not. This is not only legal, it's the right thing to do. Her words grow sharper as she recalls earlier actions by the White House. Earlier in the year, she says, the administration cancelled food orders worth $500 million, supplies intended for food banks grown by American farmers. Food that our family farmers counted on selling, she says, was blocked from reaching people in need. Both women frame the shutdown not just as a budget impasse, but as a deliberate political strategy. They remind listeners that House Republicans have been on vacation for weeks, refusing to vote on any measure to end the shutdown. If they were here, one says, they probably wouldn't object to the president's decision, not because they agree, but because they're too cowardly to stand up to him. As the event continues, journalists raise questions about the ongoing negotiations. Democratic leaders recall a month-old meeting where bipartisan discussions had briefly taken place, focusing on military and agriculture spending and a continuing resolution. At that time, they say, both sides agreed to a bipartisan path forward. But soon after, Republicans returned with a partisan plan. The Democratic negotiators described the stakes in concrete terms. They link the shutdown to the Republican healthcare crisis, pointing out that without action, hospitals, nursing homes and community health centers could close. They warn that if Congress fails to act by year's end, there could be a $536 billion cut to Medicare, affecting seniors across the country. As open enrollment for health insurance approaches, the party insists that millions of Americans are receiving notices of steep premium increases. It will make it unaffordable, one says, for them to see a doctor when they need to see one. The Democrats call this a healthcare crisis that Republicans have visited upon the American people. Then, turning to food aid, they describe what they call a man-made Republican crisis. The claim is clear. Donald Trump has decided he wants to force millions of Americans, including possibly 16 million children, to experience hunger so he can continue his my way or the highway approach. The discussion shifts to personal stories meant to humanize the crisis. One Minnesota woman named Renee, Democrats say, just received a notice that her family's health insurance will rise by $24,000 a year. Can anybody here pay for that? The Congresswoman asks. She can't. Her husband is gravely ill. Such stories, they say, reveal the real stakes of policy decisions made in Washington. The tone grows more urgent. They have the money, DeLauro insists. Let us not let them get away with saying they can't do it. Their political will isn't there to feed the people who rely on the SNAP program, the most effective anti-hunger program in the United States. When asked whether Democrats will present their own continuing resolution, leaders say they remain open to discussions with their Senate counterparts, but will not back any partisan Republican spending bill. They insist they are ready to meet the president anytime, any place, yet accuse Trump of being missing in action for 28 days, prioritizing foreign bailouts and White House renovations over domestic welfare. Reporters then press them on Republican claims that SNAP can only be funded by reopening the government. The Democratic response is firm. The funds have already been allocated by Congress in a bipartisan way to allow a continuation of SNAP benefits through November. If people go hungry beginning November 1st, it's because Donald Trump and Republicans want the American people to go hungry. They cite a lawsuit filed by more than 20 states and the District of Columbia asserting that the administration has a legal duty to release the funds. They have an absolute legal responsibility, says one speaker. We have never seen a lapse in funding for SNAP during a government shutdown. Democrats also broaden the issue to rural America, warning that Trump's trade policies have deepened farm bankruptcies. This is not an America First administration, Craig says. He's in Japan trying to sell foreign cars and last week was promoting Argentine beef. Meanwhile, America's family farmers are struggling. Their argument centers on what they call the lawlessness of the administration. They accuse officials of blaming Democrats for a problem entirely of their own making. It's in the law, DeLauro says, and they are violating it because they don't have the political will to act. The audience hears her insist that with a wave of their magic wand, the administration could get 42 million people fed. Later, questions turn to Republican criticism and the broader political climate. One reporter asks whether Democrats see any hope for flexibility from the other side. The response is cutting. These Republicans have zero credibility, a Democratic leader replies. They cut health care, they cut SNAP, and they reward their billionaire donors. The American people have already seen what Republican policies look like, and it's ripping food and healthcare away from millions. As the event nears its end, another reporter raises the question of oversight investigations. The reply comes swiftly. James Comer continues to behave like a malignant clown, says one Democrat, referring to the Republican House Oversight Chair. He hasn't done a single thing to make life better for the American people. Here's what he should investigate. Donald Trump's promise that costs would go down on day one. They didn't. Costs are going up. Inflation's moving in the wrong direction. Housing, groceries, childcare, electricity, all rising. He adds that millions now face health insurance hikes of $10,000 to $20,000 a year because Republicans refuse to renew Affordable Care Act tax credits. People will have to choose between paying for a doctor, buying food, or paying their rent, he warns. The press conference continues with more questions about the mayor's race in New York, about federal employees, and about immigration policy. Democrats note that over 200,000 federal workers have already lost their jobs since the start of the Trump administration, long before the shutdown. They accuse officials of deliberately targeting civil servants, quoting administration members who said they wanted to traumatize federal employees. We will stand with them, one says firmly. They deserve to be paid. On immigration, Democrats strike a careful balance. They call for a safe, strong and secure border, but condemn what they describe as the extremism unleashed on law-abiding immigrant families. They urge a more humane approach and a comprehensive bipartisan solution. As the final questions come in, the tone returns to the plight of American workers. Democrats accuse Republicans of trying to pressure them through the suffering of federal employees and the poor. We're going to continue to stand up for hard-working federal employees, one says. We'll continue to stand up for nutritional assistance. We'll continue to stand up for health care. This is not a game. The closing message is resolute. Democrats, they say, are going to stay in this fight until we win this fight for working-class Americans, for middle-class Americans, and for hard-working taxpayers. The press conference ends, but the message lingers. It is a portrait of two Americas, one governed by fiscal austerity and political brinkmanship, the other calling for moral responsibility and social protection. On this 28th day of the shutdown, hunger and healthcare have become symbols of something larger, a nation divided not just by party, but by competing visions of what government owes its people.